opportunity to share with you, giving honor to my pastor, Dr. Bernetta Williams. I thank you for this assignment. To the bishop and the lady of this house, God bless you. To all the pastors, ministers, saints, and friends, we thank you all for this opportunity to share with you this week. Okay. So I don't plan to be before you long, but I'm going to do what God gave me. Let us pray. Dear Lord, thank you for another opportunity that you allowed us to assemble together in your house, just to give your name glory, just to give your name honor, just to give your name praise. And I pray even now that as we go forward with this word, Lord Jesus, that you will just cleanse our minds, cleanse our hearts, and bring our focus in so that we can receive all that you have for us. We know that you're going to do it. We know that it's already done, and we bless you. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So I'm going to come to you briefly from the book of Matthew, chapter 4. And I'm going to start at verse 18. And I'm a little different, so I'm going to read from the Message translation. And when you have it, say amen. Amen. Okay. So walking along the beach of Lake Galilee, Jesus saw two brothers, Simon, later called Peter, and Andrew. They were fishing, throwing their nets into the lake. It was their regular work. Jesus said to them, "Come with me. I'll make a new kind of fisherman out of you. I'll show you how to catch men and women instead of perching bass." They didn't ask questions, but simply dropped their nets and followed. A short distance down the beach, they came upon another pair of brothers, James and John, Zebedee's sons. These two were sitting in a boat with their father, Zebedee, mending their fish nets. Jesus made the same offer to them, and they were just as quick to follow, abandoning boat and father. I want to speak to you briefly from this subject. It's not that deep, just follow me. So I chose to be a follower of Christ, but that wasn't always the case. In fact, I was often forced to come to church majority of the time, spending most of my evenings as a child on the church pew. How many of you can share that sentiment? Like you didn't always choose to go to church, but you can't imagine your life outside of church. Because of this reality, there were a lot of things that I was exposed to while sitting in those services, those prayer meetings and those revivals, in Sunday school and in Bible study. I saw people receive divine healing, people who were blind gained their sight, people came in by wheelchair and left dancing. I saw people bringing the worst of their problems and their addictions to the altar and receiving joy for their mourning. But most of all, I saw people who, just like you and I, had no idea why they were sitting in the brick building with a crowd of people who were shouting and praising God. But one day, something changed. Something just felt different. The same one who I had so many questions about, the one on whom everyone kept calling tirelessly, service after service, the one who we kept singing about, the name that brought forth deliverance, restoration, and healing, that same Jesus came to see about me. How many of you are glad that Jesus came to see about you?
I know that's right.
So let me pause parenthetically to encourage your hearts on tonight. Never think for one moment that Jesus is so high that he cannot come and see about you.
That's right.
In fact, I guarantee you that he takes joy in coming to your rescue.
Yes.
He takes great pleasure in walking through the worst of life's journey with you, because that's when he can do his best work through you. I'm reminded of what the word says in Psalm 91 and 15, where it talks about how he will answer us when we call on him. He will be with us in trouble and will bring us both deliverance and honor. Ultimately, he wants us to be where he is. And that is evident in John 14 and 3, where he gives us a promise of a prepared place made ready for us by him. What a mighty God we serve.
I know that's right.
And when I go and make ready a place for you, I will come back again and I will take you to myself, that where I am, you may be also. John 14 and 3. But it takes work. Now, on this particular night, the songs that were sung didn't sound the same to me. The testimonies that came forth from the saints had a little more conviction to them, and the word was clearer than ever before. Tonight was my night. Jesus called for me, and I finally decided to answer him. And guess what? It was the best decision I ever made. You see, a simple choice changed my life forever, and it wasn't as deep as I thought it would be. Just as we found in our text tonight, Jesus is finally launching his ministry, and he's in search of a few good men. Somebody say, a few good men.
A few good men.
He has been affirmed by his father during his ceremonial baptism in the Jordan, who sends a dove to descend upon him and declares these words, "This is my son, in whom I am well pleased."
Yeah.
He then has endured a tumultuous 40-day consecration in the desert, being tempted by Satan, who could only offer him what already belonged to him. And now he is ready to go forth. But first, he needs a good team. You see, every great leader needs a great team behind him or her.
Amen.
And sometimes we are only as strong as who or what we are connected to. So look at your neighbor and say, watch your connections.
Watch your connections.
Wow, that just blessed me. As Jesus walks the shore of the Galilee, ironically, his search efforts find him in the company of everyday people, just like you and me, doing their daily tasks, nothing out of the ordinary. This alone gives us hope in our first point. He will meet us right where we are, but we must make ourselves obtainable. You see, Jesus simply bids these gentlemen, Simon and Andrew, to follow him, and he will make them fishers of men.
Right.
Sure, they were some of the best at their jobs, but how could you refuse such an offer? When Jesus finds us and extends his hand to us, how can we refuse to drop everything and come along for the ride? Which leads us to our second point. Jesus will meet us where we are, but we must be obedient to what he asks of us.
That's right.
So first we must be obtainable. Secondly, we must be obedient. The true test of our ability to follow Christ is in how obedient we are to his direction. You see, as believers, we must do our best to follow the example of these brothers. They simply heard the call of Jesus. They simply heard the call of Jesus and left it all to follow him. Are you obedient to the things that God has asked you to do? Are you honoring him with your life? Or is disobedience worth the cost of a life apart from him? Truly, we can all work on being a little more obedient to the voice of God in our lives. So look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, don't you want to be a little more obedient? I mean, just a little. Just a little. Lastly, Jesus and his crew continued their walk only to find James and John, Zebedee's sons, on the boat with their father and the hired workers, still working. He makes the same claim and calls to them as he did to Simon and Andrew. But what was their response? They dropped everything and they joined the party. See, it's not a party until you get there. Somebody catch that later. Sometimes following Jesus can cost you everything.
That's right.
But the only way to fully partake of all that he desires for you is by being open. So first you must be obtainable. Second, you must be obedient. And thirdly, you have to be open. Their willingness to be open to what was not yet proven would later prove to be, as it was for you and I, the best decision that they could ever make. Consider this verse in Psalm 18. As for God, his way is perfect. The word of the Lord is tested and tried. He is a shield to all of those who take refuge and put their trust in him. And that's Psalm 18 and 30. There is safety in following Christ.
That's right.
There's a reassurance that no matter where we go, as long as we carry him, he carries us. After all, his way is perfect, his word is proven, and he can be trusted. So we can hang our hats on this truth because we have a Savior who desires to give rest to our souls, to ease our troubled minds, and to calm our uneasy hearts. But how do we know this? Matthew 11 and 28 shares these words with us. Come to me, all who are weary and heavily burdened, and I will give you rest. As I close, I remind you that there's nothing deep about this walk, but there is something very real about it. In following Jesus Christ, we are promised three things that I want to leave with you tonight, directly from our text. As I said before, Jesus will meet us right where we are, but we must make ourselves obtainable to be found. Sometimes being present really is just good enough. Secondly, Jesus wants us to share with him, but we can only do so by being obedient. Obedience is better than sacrifice, and some things just aren't worth the risk. Lastly, while being obtainable is essential, and while being obedient is not optional, we still must be open to whatever comes with our yes to God. Just as they dropped everything and didn't turn back, we should have the same eagerness when he calls for us. So how many of you are glad that he called for you?
I know I am.
I don't see enough hands. How many of you are glad that Jesus called for you? That Jesus came looking for you? That Jesus thought it not robbery to pick you up where you were and to bring you up to where he is? So I bid you, don't overthink the call. Don't obsess your mind with the claim. Just carry yourself to a posture of obedience and watch God show you all that he has for those, each and every one of us, who love him and are called according to his purpose. Just as I contemplated in that service, December 31st, 1999, if there were no reason for you, for me, for us, in his plan, he would have never came for us. So it's not that deep. Just follow him. But how many of us just want to follow him?
I do, yes. Amen.
Like really, how many of us really just want to follow Christ?
Amen.
God bless you.